Welcome to BeFi Insight Briefings. Today we're looking back at the last 3 years and examining behavioral finance through a pandemic life cycle. As we look at the pandemic through a holistic lens, we will explore what we learned about the advisor and investor relationship prior to, during, and coming out of the pandemic. I'm Devin Eckberg, and with me is our BeFi Barometer partner, Omar Aguilar. Omar, as we dive into the behavioral finance research from the years past, I was wondering, how have behavioral biases impacted the client decision-making process pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and coming out of the pandemic?
Yes, happy to do that and happy to be here. Advisors have reported that recency bias has played a significant role throughout the pandemic life cycle. Not surprisingly so, as individuals are easily influenced by recent news and events of their own personal experiences. We see this increase as the availability of information continues to be instantaneous, and access to information, because of the rise of internet, uptick in social media platform usage, and the explosion of smart devices, make it more and more accessible. And when you consider the number of consumers working from home and the events taking place in our society around the election, social unrest, and others, it is clearly understandable the huge rise of this bias year over year. Recency bias usually is the one where you put a lot of emphasis on recent information. The other one is loss aversion. Loss aversion play a larger role pre-pandemic and in the middle of the pandemic. This is mostly going into 2020. The loss aversion is an emotional bias, and we saw a significant rise in emotional responses because of what was happening in the world. Honestly, nobody was prepared for the pandemic. People were reacting to the potential for losses in financial markets. They were worried about healthcare, and they were worried about what was going to happen, as things continue to escalate and the uncertainty around it. The third one is familiarity bias. Familiarity bias is also one of the biases that play a bigger part during the heart of the pandemic, because it's a natural tendency in the middle of uncertainty to seek certainty. You always look for something that can allow you to be familiar and feel comfortable so that you can feel better. Confirmation bias, which is linked to familiarity bias, is also linked to framing biases. These are cognitive biases that play a significant role as we try to come out of this pandemic, especially over the last year. This is most likely attributed to people trying to make sense of the new information as it's presented to them. And in certain ways, a little bit trying to understand and then seeing the positive pieces of coming out of the pandemic. They default back to things that already know, and they always look for information that confirm that things are going in the way that they believe at the beginning. Framing bias comes from the sense that they anchor themselves grounded in something they like, and that allows them to feel comfortable so that they can continue to go on. Where behavioral finance comes into play is to understand the significance of impact on advisors can have in these situations. Advisors, first of all, we're all humans. So they need to acknowledge that clients will have emotions. Advisors should use this opportunity to validate their clients' concerns, as it's a normal reaction. Advisors should also try to get level set expectations with their clients, and also understanding that advisors are also people and they also have different reactions. Please, advisors, think about how they keep their clients focused on long-term goals. Remind them that their long-term plans, have not changed. Trying to stay the course and allow them to make least amount of changes, especially in the middle of the uncertainty. Advisors could also continue to establish discipline process and set guidelines so that they can work through their clients in the periods where emotions are actually rising high. Always try to do that with one of the most important pieces in behavioral finance, which is proactive communication.
So we've learned a few things here. We've learned that in uncertain times, applying the principles of behavioral finance can be especially relevant. So it's not surprising to see that advisors report substantial improved effectiveness in using behavioral finance techniques. The environment of the last year has highlighted the extent of clients' concerns and preferences. And advisors should be well served by attempting to address these biases on a proactive basis across all of their client base. And our research cited a notable increase in the effectiveness of implementing a systematic process, cautioning investors to stay calm and increasing their portfolio diversification as well. So for more advice from one of our leading behavioral finance experts, check out our BeFi Insight Briefings at the Investments and Wealth Institute, or visit our website for more resources and tools to help you improve your clients' outcomes.